Let's turn to the impact electorally that you've had. I mean, did you have? Are you organized in Virginia?
Sure. Yeah, Virginia. Boy, yes. Tuesday was big. We have I think about 60 local groups across Virginia. This is actually, I love this example of kind of how our whole model works. So yes, of course, they're very motivated to work on redistricting on this ballot initiative that Virginia voted on Tuesday. Several weeks ago, maybe even a couple months ago, what we started to hear from our volunteers and our organizer on the ground in Virginia was actually a lot of concern about confusion. This was a confusing ballot initiative. You know, what is the gerrymandering happening on which side? What are we redistricting for? Why are we doing this? What does this have to do with what happened in Texas? There's something else happening in Florida. You know, a lot of confusion just about what a yes vote meant versus a no vote. Also, the opposition to this very important redistricting ballot initiative was spending millions of dollars. I mean, it was exposed, like Peter Thiel spent $5 million on mailers, claiming that a no vote was aligned with what President Obama was saying, was aligned with what MLK would have said and other civil rights leaders. Just blatant lies, classic disinformation campaign. But there was a lot of money behind it. And again, just feeding this.
I wish I could say I'm shocked. I can't even. I'm not. It doesn't rise to the level of. We know they do this. Yeah. We know they do it. So how do you beat it? And you're talking about that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I genuinely believe that not only are conversations between friends more powerful than campaign ads, they are also more powerful than mailers, which are essentially just, you know, spam in people's literal mailboxes. But we have to tap into those relationships and those conversations and get people aware enough of what's coming at them so that we do get them talking about this. And that we don't just go, oh, well, whatever, it's just politics. Who knows if a yes or a no vote is the same, it is how we should vote. It's all the same, right? That's the intention, right? Is just to create enough confusion that people sort of check out and our side doesn't show up enough to win on these things. And so we did a few things. So one thing was the overall confusion, not only because of all the misinformation like that I was just talking about. Also, I don't know why this happens again and again. We see it all the time, but the official ballot campaign, their signs were filled. They had 35 words on them. The yes was very small. It took up 5% of the real estate of the whole sign, so people were just like, we can't even, there's all these signs everywhere, but we can't even tell which way they're telling us to vote. So we worked with folks on the ground to design a sign where the yes took up about 85% of the real estate of the sign. We made content where we had, our sort of take on the whole confusion is we actually had moms from North Carolina and Texas who have been so gerrymandered that they no longer have a voice. And so they're basically relying on Virginia to give them a voice too, to get our districts more balanced again. So we were creating content with these moms, asking the moms in Virginia to show up for them. People really loved that sense of solidarity, and it helped them better understand how I'm doing this for the greater good. And we just got to work using this network of 60 groups, having events, having conversations, getting people aware of the propaganda that was coming in. And so why we really needed to take action, and that this wasn't just going to happen if we didn't really get out there and start talking to everyone we know. So, the yes vote ended up winning by, I think it was about 90,000 votes, 3 points, closer than I would have liked, but it sure does make me glad that we took action. And it's just a great example of how we do it, because it was not based on okay, let's talk to some consultants in DC about what they're seeing in the polling. It was based on what are people seeing.
You dealt with a real problem, which was that voters were confused.
Yeah.
And that's not lobbying one way or the other. It's making sure they knew in this sea of disinformation what the facts are. And that's enormously powerful. And when a faction benefits from making sure that people don't know what's reality and what isn't, the only way, and you talked about experts in totalitarian thinking, the only way to get past that is through trust.
Yes.
Is through trust, which you have to build, and they have to trust that you are giving them information that really is accurate, and that matters so much.
Yep. Yeah, it really does, again and again. And that's our approach. I mean, we worked in the North Carolina primaries earlier this year as well. I'm in Ohio, we have the Ohio
I was
primaries.
going to ask you about Ohio because you're there. I
Oh.
mean, David Pepper is a friend of mine.
Oh, good.
And Amy Acton, I like.
The Dr. Pepper ticket.
The Dr. Pepper ticket. I mean, like but Ohio is a big challenge. You have a state where the voters have affirmed that they don't believe in gerrymandering. Your state Supreme Court even once said, we don't believe in gerrymandering. And it didn't help. The gerrymandered legislatures told them to go jump in the lake and did it anyway and ran out the clock before the last election.
Because we're gerrymandered.
Because we are so harshly gerrymandered, right. And Michigan threw off its gerrymander, and Wisconsin has thrown off its gerrymander. So along the Great Lakes, you're it. That's the last one standing. We need you to like liberate yourselves.
We're working on it, Edwin. I promise.
I mean, so what does it look like in the organizing for the election there?
Yeah. Well, I do want people to notice what can happen in Ohio when we are not in a presidential year. So, in 2023, of course, we had the reproductive rights ballot initiative here in Ohio, and that we won with a resounding
huge win.
And so to me, what that shows is that when there can actually be a chance for voters to express how they feel when it comes to their values, how they feel on an issue, we're pretty mainstream, just like the rest of America. We think it's like pretty common sense to be able to have basic access to reproductive health care. And so we won on that. When we get into these presidential years and when we are just inundated with the hundreds of millions of dollars that talk about confusion, nobody knows which way is up around here. I mean, it's just
even in the abortion one, when you have a Secretary of State who tried to make the language on the ballot as confusing and misleading as possible. So you still had to tell people what it meant to vote one way or the other.
But we could overcome that.
It made no sense.
But we could overcome that because it wasn't in the midst of a presidential year where there was the hundreds of millions of dollars. Like, you could actually have a conversation with voters and break through the noise. We also tend to do very well in Ohio on any nonpartisan race. Because again, so like our school board races, for example, they're not partisan. That's not true in every state across the country, but they are nonpartisan here. And we, almost every time we need to beat back one of these sort of Moms for Liberty type extremist candidates, we are able to do so because that kind of extremism isn't what people actually want. And so when you can have that works. So
they aren't actually all the moms.
Yeah. So I think that when we have, that's right. And then I think that what happens in the midterms is different. It's somewhere in between these odd years, right? It's not a presidential year, but it's not an odd year where you really can have more of a clear line of communication with voters all across the state. But what we did see in 2018, Democrats flipped 6 suburban seats in the state house that year. The goal in the state legislature this year is in both the state Senate and the state house to break the supermajorities, so that there can at least be a conversation, some negotiation, a little bit of representation of the full diversity of the state. And I think that we do have a shot at doing that.